You know, I don't work in Hollywood. I'm not a professional writer. I'm barely a critic. I'm barely an artist, but it's it really is not that hard to adapt source material with a little bit of time and effort and care. 20% luck, 50% skill, 100% concentrated power of will, and you can adapt something into a borderline masterpiece. Not today though.
I don't want to hurt anyone, but it feels kind of good.
I as soon as I saw this,
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
I kind of knew what direction this was headed. Which leads us to today we have Firestarter. What is Firestarter, you may ask? Between the great March releases and the soon-to-be summer blockbuster season, we have this weird interim of films that are still Hollywood releases. They still look the part, right? But nobody's heard of them. There's piss poor marketing, and the word's not getting out there. I saw like 2 trailers for this film. One in the theater. I think in the theater. Maybe. I don't even recall that. And the second one I saw online, and it was like streaming on Peacock. And I was like, well, wait a second. Is it not in theaters anymore? No, it was just, this is also going to be streaming on Peacock. You know, the nation's most used streaming service. This is apparently a remake of an original adaptation, but this is the 2022 newest adaptation of a pre-existing Stephen King novel, surprisingly one of which I don't think I've heard of. I've read a good amount of Stephen King. He may be my most read author. Many Stephen King short stories, long series, novels. I don't recall hearing about Firestarter. Keep in mind, the Stephen King adaptations are very hit or miss, but I thought, let's give it a go. This one is directed by a Keith Thomas. This is only this gentleman's second film. You might as well call it his directorial debut, but I don't know anything about his previous film, The Vigil, so I don't know if it was good or bad. In terms of the star power, there's a couple names you might know in there. I mean, definitely you're going to know Zac Efron. I'll throw him up here, but he's again one of those. I would say he's a household name, right? Most people, even if you haven't seen a film he's in, you at least know of Zac Efron. The other one of note is the little girl who plays the daughter. Was this, I literally can't even read my own fucking handwriting. What is this world coming to? Ryan Kiara Armstrong. My bad. She's actually made the rounds in Hollywood before. Most notably so, she was a character that I do not recall in It Chapter 2. And most recently featured, not her specifically featured, but in a film that I reviewed on my channel. She was like a flashback character in Black Widow, I believe. It's been a minute since I saw that movie. I'm probably never going to watch it again, but she was in both those. So she's been in AAA blockbuster, titles. But the long and the short of it, tale as old as time, a kid in family has powers. Parents try to hide kid from shady agency that wants to study the kid for the powers, and so now you have this like struggle dynamic of, oh, do we teach her how to use the powers, or do we make her stifle it because we haven't watched Frozen? So what should we do? Let it go or no? So the pros, I thought the actors all did well enough. I wasn't, none of the performances so much got me. It's more the script, which I'll get to in a minute. But the actors are doing the best they can and giving some emotional moments here and there. I was never taken out of the film by their lack of talent or anything. This was cast fairly well. Everybody does a good job, or good enough. That's what I would have to say. Additionally, I like this. This film has an R rating, which made me think it was going to be like R, like Stephen King R. And if you've read Stephen King, you know he does not shy away from violence. This man will give it to you in brutal detail. It'll come out of nowhere, too. I almost felt as if it was underutilized in this film. Whenever there is some R-worthy content, it happens. It's really just like some burns and maybe some people getting like shot or disintegrated. But really, aside from that and some language and all that, they don't really utilize the R as much as they probably should have. But there were practical effects whenever there could be, so whenever there could be. A lot of the girls' powers, a lot of the powers in this movie in general are digital, but there's a few specific bits. One involving the dad and this mind trick so his eyes will kind of bleed. It looked like he was wearing contacts and having actual like blood between scenes. I hope it might have been digital. I don't hope, but I mean, who's to say? But if it was practical, cool. Whenever there were like burn marks or some like fire stunts here and there was, even albeit toward the end a little bit cheesy. Whenever there's like telekinetic or mind powers, it's got to be CG. It's got to be just for general safety, I guess. So not all of it was practical. They only get a little bit of an earn back with me there. The few concepts that were introduced, this is coming from a guy who I have no idea. I've never read a single sentence out of Firestarter, so I get the premises, and there's some interesting things that are brought up and that are kind of sort of explored, but so much of it is not, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the concepts that are brought up, similar to what my last review, Petite Maman, did, very different film, but good example here. Concepts are brought up. Interesting concepts are put on the table. Whether or not the film decides to start cutting and giving you some slices is that's another matter. The biggest things about this film, and there's more cons than pros, I would say, the narrative leaves me very wanting. There's so much this film could have done and then doesn't do, and this film does some stuff but doesn't. It's messy, it's clunky. What's the weirdest part is whenever things are coming to a head and there's some action sequences or there's some like action happening, it's not the actor's fault. I think it's direction and I think it's script. Everything is just so weird and clunky and kind of stiff and doesn't flow. There's a whole scene in the movie Logan, one of the first big encounters in that, when again, similar, shady government agents are raiding this place, and the little girl and the old man have got to, like, get away but also fight them. That's action-packed, it's well shot, there's stakes, it's going. A similar scene happens in this. Literally, at a farm, you have the father and you have the daughter, and the shady government agent shows up, and people just kind of stand around, run over here, walk, I'm going to use my power, it's going to happen. It's really weird how the director chose to have things transpire, and it's got to feel weird in editing, because you're like watching this, and you can't be that entertained by it, and it somehow made it past the beta testing. So I almost felt as if, and this is a bad sign, I felt as if I had read the book, there would have been more context. With a movie like the Doctor Strange film that came out not too long ago, that came out and like I read the book, so it enhanced the experience. But even as somebody who hadn't read the book, like my friend who watched it with me, they still gathered what happened, and there's enjoyment out of it, it's explained to you adequately enough. This, I kind of had a general explanation due to the opening credits and some expository dialogue here and there, but so much of this film I'm kind of left like, okay, well, I'll extrapolate information from there. I guess I know who these people are, and then I get the motivations kind of, but you gotta like make a lot of leaps in your mind, and just also character decisions don't always make sense sometimes. It's just weird decisions, and it's just the flow of this film is so odd. It's not even that it suffers from pacing problems. It has a decent, I'm going to be very generous when I say this, it has a very decent pace to it. It's okay. I didn't want to walk out of the theater, but it just was so, it just felt odd. Overall, I was a bit stumped on what to rate this. Critics fucking hated this shit, even audience members. I'm not saying this is good, really. It's okay. It's an okay film. I had moderate entertainment out of it. Whether it was ironic entertainment, whether it was genuine entertainment, is a matter of conjecture here, but I probably will regret this, but here we go. And sorry if this review has been kind of clumsy, but it's just like the film. I mean, I just almost don't know really what to say, but I would give Firestarter low 3 out of 5. It is definitely below average, and I wouldn't even say it's really good per se. In the right light, it's okay and has some moments to it. There are some pros to this film. The actors are trying their best to salvage what they can from this script. The practical effects, the locations, the characters, the story, they're there. They're just not fleshed out well enough. I would go lower if it was a complete dumpster fire. I didn't think it was a dumpster fire. I just thought it was kind of weird. Side note, John Carpenter did the music for this, and you can definitely tell because it has some very 80s Halloween sounding music, and that sounds cool and all, sure, but that's like the only track it sounds like he really helped to compose and produce. I don't think he did the soundtrack for the whole thing. If he did, color me corrected and surprised. But in terms of adaptations, I can't accurately judge it as an adaptation. I have not read the source material, but let me put it this way. When Dune came out, I hadn't read a single sentence out of Dune. I loved it, was hooked, I sang its praises, gave it a perfect score, and I loved how within just a span of a little over 2 hours, I recognized this whole world. I got the premise. And with this, even though it's again a book that I haven't read a single sentence out of, I don't know. I'm not like interested to see where the story could go. I didn't really care too much about what happened. I was watching it. I was moderately entertained. I was curious to see how it would end, but people just kind of do things in this movie and it kind of goes, and it's okay. I don't have a strong desire to watch it again, but if somebody put it on in the background, I guess I would take a peek again. As a matter of fact, for the first time ever, I'm going to cave to peer pressure and change my review mid-review. You hear that right? Yeah, no, I'm changing it. The more that I think about it, the more I gotta be... It's not really a good film. It wasn't a good time. You know what? Yeah. Strike the record for the first time ever. Here we go. High 2. I'll give it a high 2. I'll put this and Petite Maman in the same category. Because if I'm being honest, I want to see neither film again. I didn't find either film to be particularly good. I thought there were more redeeming qualities out of this film than Petite Maman, which is going to be the hottest take of the century, but there was more to this. There was more... I think more points landed in this. More points got from point A to point B. I don't know. It's hard to me to verbalize this. I'm going to say this. Don't waste your time with Firestarter. I'll leave it at high 2 out of 5. You don't need to see it. There's so many better Stephen King adaptations of previously existing works that are much more entertaining films. This has some redeeming qualities to it, but only enough where, I mean, it's to the point where there's enough cons where I changed my mind just now to like a lower review, and I'm going to stick with that. So yeah, messy review. I'm sorry for that. A little delirious these days, but I'm doing what I can. Thank you guys else so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.